Coming to you live from the Drew Estate and Gurkha Cigar Studios in the great state of New Hampshire. Welcome to the Spare Notes series with your hosts, Matt Tabacco, Pat Chamberlain, and William Cooper.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Smoking Tobacco Show. I'm sorry, not the Smoking Tobacco Show. The Spare Notes series. My apologies. Coop's not with us tonight, so I got all confused. It's Saturday night. This is the Spare Notes series. I am joined once again by my good friend, Mr. Pat Chamberlain from SmokingTobacco.com. William Cooper is not with us tonight because of a scheduling conflict that arose, but that's okay. We're holding down the fort for him, and we look forward to having him back on the next episode. So stay tuned for that. Sorry, I'm just adjusting my gain ever so slightly because I was a little bit low. Sorry about that. But Pat, it's good to see you. I haven't seen you since before Christmas, so it's the holiday break. Not much going on. We didn't do a show the week of Christmas, and this week I did Smoking Tobacco show solo with John Carney, who says hello, and we talked about Bentley and kind of how things are going and what this year is going to look like for him. So he's got a lot of irons in the fire and shit like that. But now we're here. It's Spare Notes, so
Oh yeah.
It's Saturday night.
Is my audio picking up?
Should be.
I have that thing where it's I can't hear myself, and that's what happened the first week.
Really?
Want to catch that?
That's weird. Well, I can hear you, I'm pretty sure. You adjust your gain, maybe? No, that's a little too high. Let me turn this up. Can you hear yourself now?
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. My apologies.
Crisis averted.
There you go. I think what happened was your volume, not so much your gain, but your listening volume was down a little bit, but I fixed that. So, anyway, we're here, and it's been a quiet few weeks since the holidays. Most industry stuff. There's not a lot going on. You have first of all the factories close, the companies close. All the sales reps go home. They're with their families for Christmas, and so there's not really a lot going on. We started getting some emails on some stuff yesterday, actually. Nothing too major. Some of it we'll talk about, but again, nothing too major. You're probably not going to get a lot of big stuff till maybe next week, or the week after, and then you're going to start getting the TPE announcements, which probably won't be that wild. But then I would say by middle of February, you're starting to get PCA, hey, this is what we're bringing to the show, and then all the way through the rest of February, March, into April, right up to the show. It'll be one of the busier times of the year because of that, so that's usually how it goes. So, but anyway, we'll keep it kind of open forum. And there's a couple of random things I was going to talk about tonight. One of them has to do with pricing with certain products, which we've talked a little bit about before on the Smoking Tobacco Show, but there was a discussion that came up recently with some people, and I figured I'd kind of open it a little bit. Also, awards are coming out soon. We're finalizing that right now. I have most of it in play. A couple of curveballs came up, but looking into it and trying to round that out. But anyway, it's that time of the year. It's a really, I would like to say it's my favorite time of the year, but it's really not. I'll be honest with you. Putting a list together is always, it's not as fun as you think it would be. I actually would rather be kind of knee deep in trade show coverage, which is really busy, but I prefer to do that than this other stuff. I don't know. It's just me. After doing this for 5-6 years now, it's kind of where I'm at with it, but it's what we do, so that's why we're here. Anyway, how was your holiday, Pat?
It's good. It's quiet.
Like
Just
you.
The way I like. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, just like you.
Yeah,
I'm not that quiet. You're quiet in person, but then when you're on the show, you always have so much to say.
Yeah.
Let me take that back. You have a lot to say, especially when it's a topic that pertains to something that bothers you, or something that you just really know a lot about, which is great. But yeah, you can be a little quiet. But that's not always a bad thing.
I'm a listener.
Yeah,
I
I know.
like to observe.
Yeah, Pat's one of those people. He likes to observe people. he listens very well. He sees everything, and he reads people. So, but then again, you're an attorney, so I think that's kind of part of the job, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. What are you smoking? Is that Padron?
Yep, I'm smoking a Padron 1964 Imperial Maduro.
Ooh, very nice, very nice. It's sorry, I got distracted by something that was just submitted to me from the audience over here. We'll come right back to that for a second because this was just too good not to share. A certain member of our team who shall remain nameless, in the bright pink beanie over there on the couch, you should start a segment called Pat's Problems. Make it a weekly segment. I like that.
I could do a daily segment if you wanted
Oh,
to.
I know you could do a daily segment. I know you could. Oh my God. But yeah, Padron, nice choice. That's a nice choice. I haven't had one of those in a bit. I'm gonna be honest with you. I saw that and I was like, oh damn, that's a nice choice. How was it smoking?
Good.
Perfect.
I haven't had it in a bit either. I just was like, I'm going to smoke something I haven't had in a while that I know I like.
Yeah.
So, got this. I usually smoke the, excuse me, the Principe? No.
Is that right?
It comes in the tubo. I think it's a Principe. No, the Presenzado. Presenzado.
Oh, you mean,
I can't talk today. My God.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah,
talking
no.
about? In the tubo.
Yeah.
I'm not Englishing well today.
Mm-mm.
Presidente. That's what
Yes.
it is. Oh my God.
Sorry, I was
Presenzado.
relighting my cigar.
Yeah,
Yes.
the Presidente.
Yes, I was
is
gonna
the
say.
one-
I'm thinking about it. I'm like,
Yeah, I don't know why. I just
I'm like, why do I
brain
not?
farted.
I'm like, why is that not coming to mind? And then I'm like, oh
Yeah.
yes, yeah, because I'm like, because that's not what it is.
Yeah, that's the
Um,
one I usually prefer smoking. But yeah, the Imperial's really good. It's nice, kind of. Even though like they have one called the Toro that isn't a Toro. It's like a double Robusto.
Yes.
This
yes.
is like the true Toro.
Right. No, that's a great size. I also one of my favorite sizes is that number 48 size.
Yeah.
It like almost like a thicker Robusto.
Mhm.
You know, I really enjoy that in the 1926 Maduro.
Mhm.
1926 Maduro. The first time I had that blend in that size was with John Carney. Actually, he was with me. We were together for the weekend, and we went into Two Guys on a Friday, and I was getting some stuff. He bought some stuff, and he just asked, "Can I just get a whole box of them?" And we just ended up smoking them like all weekend. And I just remember being like, "Damn, I've never had it in this size," and ever since then, it stuck with me, and I'm like, "That's my favorite size in that blend." And I smoke other sizes, but box buy every day when I want to smoke it, that's the size, that's the blend, that's probably my favorite Padron cigar. Out of all of them, I mean, I know there's cigars that are better and whatever, but that's all around, that's probably my favorite Padron cigar. It hits every time and it's fantastic. You almost can never really go wrong with Padron. I mean, it's another one of those brands where they're good at what they do. I mean, they're very consistent. And I'm smoking a Perdomo 30th Anniversary Sun-Grown Epicure, which has been one of my favorite cigars from 2024. That's, I guess, given what's going on right now, that's all I'm going to say. Maybe it's on the list, maybe it's not. But, if you pay attention, you probably put two and two together. It's one of the new cigars that came out last year, along with a lot of other cigars. And I've been working on the list, and it's still in its draft phase, but we're getting it close and seeing some similarities to last year's list in terms of like manufacturers and factories and stuff like that have continued to remain consistent in the way that they're represented. And again, it's not, the lists are not put together because of any sort of way other than we take all the cigars that were great, we put them on the list and try to organize them. And I see trends, and I don't want to say too much and give it away yet. It's something I'm definitely going to get into more when the whole list is revealed. But I'm seeing some trends that I find interesting from last year. Some similarities of some things, and which I think is good for the manufacturers who it involves. It shows the consistency year after year of, continuing to, hit multiple spots on a list and kind of be around the same spots too. And I think it speaks a lot to, how well they're performing, which is great. So, but again, I don't want to get too into that yet because, I don't want to give anything away. So when everything's out, I'll probably be a lot more specific on that. But anyway, we'll talk about that when it's time. One of the things I wanted to bring up was we were talking a little bit about this before the show started, and Coop's not here, and we'll have to probably bring this up again with him because I'd love to get his perspective. But one of the things that we brought up or was brought to my attention this week, I don't want to get too specific with it because I don't want to put anyone in a weird spot, but I've had a few manufacturers reach out to me on this particular issue, and one in particular I spoke with a little bit more yesterday, and it involves pricing on some of the products out there. And we've talked about this before a little bit. Some of the rare brands, not brands, but the rare cigars from certain brands, they hit the market, and it's not just one or two that might seem obvious. I mean, there's a bunch out there. I mean, even Davidoff's got some stuff out there that people really go nuts for and is really high priced. And some shops get it, and they know that there's a demand there, and they know that it's highly sought after, and they charge more than MSRP on it. There's a manufacturer's suggested retail price, which for the average cigar usually gets charged, but on certain stuff with a higher demand, retailers have raised prices. And there's been a few instances that have been brought to my attention, which and it's nothing new, but I guess it's becoming a sore subject with some manufacturers, with some of their products being advertised at an MSRP, and I use, for those who are listening, air quotes, an MSRP for a price that's actually not the MSRP. There was a particular cigar that was posted for a certain price, and it was like, oh, it's MSRP, and the manufacturer said, that is double the MSRP price. That is not MSRP. That is a lie. Don't lie to your customers. That's BS, and, and again, there's not really much the manufacturer can do. I mean, a retailer is going to do what a retailer is going to do, and they set their prices because they know that they have certain demand and there's only so much available. And I do understand the logic behind it, but I don't know. The feeling I'm getting is that there's some manufacturers who are, trying to find ways to combat that. And one of the things that I know you know really well, you have a similar situation right now with the bourbon industry. I mean, in New Hampshire where we live, all of the liquor stores are state-controlled, much like Pennsylvania. Oh, no, not Ohio. Who are the others? Pennsylvania, I think Virginia. There's a few others out there that are state-controlled. And then you have Massachusetts to the south of our border, where I came from, where, it's, regular independently owned liquor stores. So the thing with controlled states is, because the state takes it all in, they usually hold raffles and everyone can enter, and you have a chance to buy it at MSRP, versus when you go to like states like Massachusetts or wherever where all the liquor stores are independent, everyone kind of gets different allocations based on what they sell through their distributor. It's very similar in the cigar business. And then that's when you go in and you see, oh, they have one bottle of Pappy Van Winkle and they want $1,500 for it. That's why. So it's kind of the same thing. And I think a lot of people are getting. And the sad thing is there's people out there to pay it. As you know, there's people out there who go in there and they're like, I'll give you $1,500 for that bottle. It's a $200 bottle of bourbon, and giving them $1,500, $2,000 for that bottle. But some people pay it, and that's the ridiculous part. So these stores are getting away with it.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. I think the bourbon, I think some people are like, oh, I'd rather pay the extra money as long as it's accessible to me, because it kind of takes the hunt out of it if you just pay that premium to get it.
Yeah.
Because obviously in New Hampshire, it's a lot of specifically with bourbon, a lot of the bourbon hunters come here because if you find it, you're going to get it for MSRP, and then you can sell it for, like that $200 bottle. You can get your $1,500 off of it, so make like $1,300 profit. So I think in a state like New Hampshire, I mean, we're subject to that kind of bourbon hunt. clientele. But then if you go to mass, like there's a lot of places like if you want to get a Pappy bottle, you know where to get it, and if you really want one, you're gonna get one, but you're not gonna pay MSRP for it.
No.
And some people are just fine with that, But then, I guess when it comes to cigars, it's different. It's kind of the same thing because if we talk like uber rare, I guess, brands. I mean, we have like you mentioned, like Fuente, the Opus lines. Excuse me. Davidoff, like the Zodiac signed cigars typically are
Andalusian Bull from La Flor Dominicana.
Yep, the Andalusian Bull. I mean, we could probably make a huge. I mean, Tatuajes, like the Monster series.
Yeah, Tatuajes
like
got a
the
lot of
dress
them.
boxes.
Yep.
I mean, and the list just goes on. Like EP Krillo, like the Pledge of Allegiance was one of those sought after ones as well.
That
There's
went
only so
fast.
many of those.
Yep.
Padron, even like the
Brulee Blue.
Brulee Blue.
I don't think people are necessarily really going crazy on the pricing for that. I could be wrong,
No, I haven't seen it.
but
Like, it's been hard to get, but I haven't seen anyone mark it up at all.
the question is, on something like that, does it eventually get to that point? Because it is so sought after, and I know from your experience working at Twins, you guys would get it in, and it'd be gone.
Well, luckily
'Cause
now,
people know when they come in, they get it. It's gone.
Soccer's caught up with the demand for it, so it's not back ordered right now, as
Yeah.
of now. So,
Well, yeah.
but yeah, I find a lot of, and one of the big no-nos, and I mean, I kind of talked about this whenever it was that we spoke about this last. But I mean, I focus a lot on Fuente because that's where I just see it so often.
I think that's the worst abused
is.
brand. I think
And
that's
I mean, you have numerous things that happen that I think are just big no-nos. One is, I think retailers buy Prometheus humidors, and they sell the singles. Like you say, it's one of those humidors. We'll just call it a 20 count. It comes with 20 cigars with the humidor. Just say it's $2,000, right? So they take the humidor and they divide it up amongst how many cigars they have. So that would be 20 cigars. So $100 a stick, and they'll just sell $100 per stick. Singles out of the humidor, which is a no-no, by the way. I mean, to my understanding, I don't think Fuente wants singles sold out of those humidors. I'm not Fuente, so if that's not true, then what? But I've heard that that's not what they prefer have happen. But and then you look at other shops that.
Well, if you don't mind, just to add to what you just said, when it comes to like the Prometheus ones,
Yeah.
that has nothing to do with Fuente. That's through Keith Park at Prometheus. So he sets his own rules with that. And and Carlitos told me that personally. He goes, I send them the cigars. I have no once I send them to him, I have nothing to do with it after that. He can do whatever he wants.
Yeah. So
They're his cigars, but when they actually get packaged, he has nothing to do with it.
To my understanding, I think that's a no-no. But either way, I mean, I've been in shops too or I've been online and I've seen MSRP, and it will be what I know is like at least double the MSRP. And I think it's weird because when you buy the product, it's kind of, in a way, do what you want. I know typically the more contended topic is going to be people underselling it because now it's going to be adverse to the other clients and partners of these brands. But overselling it it's not really harming anyone else but the manufacturer because, again, like what we've talked about specifically with Opus, this isn't the only brand. This is just everyone knows me with Opus. It's people look at Opus and you hear more often now how it's an overpriced cigar and you're just buying the name. And I think people are kind of forgetting what Opus is, but it's just like, if you get an Opus, it's going to be... It's like what Buffalo Trace is now. Like, you're paying all this extra money for the name, and it's not $100 bourbon or $100 cigar. And I think that's, as a manufacturer, something that I would not be okay with. Even though, obviously, if you buy the product, you sell it how you want to, as long as I'm not going to go under MSRP. But it doesn't look good for the brand, and I think a lot of companies are kind of noticing this now, especially if it's being marketed. If it's marketed as MSRP when it's not, then that's just not okay to do.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a rare cigar, it could just be a core line. If you're saying this is the MSRP, no, Like, that's a big no-no. It doesn't matter if it's rare or not rare.
I'll give you another one to kind of segue this into a different example. Many moons ago, I used to work in the jewelry industry for a few years. And I can tell you, luxury brands, whether it's, fashion or it's, jewelry, if it's a watch manufacturer, if it's a wine, champagne company or cigars, it could be liquor, it could be any kind of company that presents themselves as a very high-end luxury good product, something that most people maybe can't afford, or if they do, it's not something that they buy easily. Those companies hold themselves to certain standards, and as such to the people that they work with. So I'll give you an example. Rolex, for example. Rolex is a company like many others where there is a set of guidelines that must be met in order to be an authorized Rolex dealer. And if you don't follow those, they will come in your store, they will take them back and say, you don't get to sell Rolex anymore. They don't look at it from like, oh, well, we're going to piss off a client or a customer. No, they're protecting the integrity of their brand. Now, I know the cigar industry is not like that, and and I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen. So I don't want anyone to get all like worked up about it, but conceptually, it's the same idea. Like, companies were protecting their brand. So, I know that if you were to discount a Rolex beyond a certain percentage, and it became a consistent problem, and they got wind of that, because a competitor would be like finding out because they lose a sale, and then they start to complain, and Rolex looks into it. They'll come to you and be like, you're discounting our products, and selling. We want the products to be sold at their MSRP. And there's been some instances where, some retailers have upcharged for them or whatever because, like, we're going to get it because people are going to spend it on a gold Rolex with a diamond bezel, right? A date just with a diamond bezel out of gold, whatever, they might charge more. But the thing is those companies are like, we have a set MSRP, whether it's lower or higher, we want that price because we want everyone to be able to go into a store and find our product at the same price no matter where they go. And they really fight to protect that too. Now, I think what is different about like tobacco and alcohol in terms of like, bourbon and cigars is while some of those products might be luxury to us, and yeah, sure, maybe they check some of the boxes for what that means, high price or, quality. I think it's different and it's harder to enforce because they're both like regulated products that are in markets where other products that are similar, not everyone's doing that. So it's kind of like there's not like a universal system versus like in watches or stuff like that. Rolex is doing it, Breitling's doing it, Omega's doing it, Audemars Piguet's doing it. They're all doing it. Versus the cigar industry, if one company does it, most companies don't do that. So I think it's harder to kind of justify it because then you just look like the one asshole who's like, well, I'm going to take it away. So, but my point being is that I think that some manufacturers are just feeling the frustration and they're not sure what to do about it. And they're trying to figure out like, well, I think the problem for them is I have these products and people come to me to complain that they can't get it or it's super expensive and it's not my fault. It's the retailer's fault, but I have no control over it once they get it. So, and it's the same with like, Buffalo. I'm sure Buffalo Trace is sick and tired of people asking about Pappy Van Winkle and George T. Stagg and like Weller. And, why can't I just go buy a bottle of Elmer T. Lee for $30? Elmer T. Lee is a good bourbon. I'm going to say that I like Elmer T. Lee. If I have a bottle, I will drink it. I think it's great. I had one with you the other night at Twins. I had a glass of Elmer T. Lee. It was great. It's $33.99 MSRP. Fair price for that bottle. People spend $500 for that, and I don't know why. I'm like, that's not even close.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, I just don't get it. Like, it's not worth it. $100 is like overpaying for Elmer T. Lee. $300, $400, $500. What are you doing? Like, that's just like, even if you have the money to throw away, that's just stupid. That's like going to McDonald's and spending $100 on a Big Mac with fries and chicken nuggets. Like, why? I get it. People want stuff, and people know that there's a demand, but at the same time, this stuff gets ridiculous because everyone kind of does their own thing, and then there are people who pay for it, and then, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse until, it gets to a point where people just stop buying it completely, or, manufacturers are just like, no. I mean, look what happened with Kentucky Owl. You remember the Kentucky Owl story, right? They were one of those bourbons. Everyone, they were buying it and flipping it and putting it in secondary. So what did Kentucky Owl do? Okay, we're just gonna raise the price and make the MSRP like on confiscate. What's confiscated? $179.99 MSRP roughly.
Mm-hmm.
They said, okay, confiscated is $180 a bottle. There you go. You find confiscated everywhere you go now because no one's paying that for. Oh, okay, like. And confiscated is a good bottle, but it's not $180 even at MSRP. It's like, but you get shit like that, and I guess that's one way to mitigate it. But
yeah, I find it weird because I'm not in the spirit industry, so obviously bartending is one thing, but when it comes to like the retail perspective of spirits, I've never been experienced in that. But so this could be like an unfair comparison or opinion, but I found that. I'll just use Buffalo Trace because it's the most common. Everyone knows what it is too. You don't really have people saying that Buffalo Trace is a bad distillery because of the prices of their products. People just are more blaming the collectors and the post-COVID bourbon group that just started buying it. But when in the retail setting with these companies where their products historically get marked up, I found people that are just not even open to trying them because they think they're just overpriced cigars. And I don't know if if I worked in a spirit retailer, if I would have the same opinion, but I just think it's different. Like, for whatever reason, like in this industry, the opinion of the consumer is different towards these brands that have products that are marked up outside of their control. Because there's been times where we would get something in stock that's one of those categorized rare to get cigars, and we'd have it at MSRP, like the actual MSRP, and again, no tax in New Hampshire, so like literally MSRP, and people don't want to smoke it because they have this opinion it's an overpriced cigar. You're paying for the label. And it comes from that. Whenever you see it, it's $100 or $60, or it's always more than it's supposed to be. And like just piggybacking off of when we briefly mentioned this, I think it was the last episode, is like Coraline Opus is like a $20 cigar. That's what it was intended to be. That's where it is.
On average.
There's
a lot of sizes. So
I'm just like, traditional Coraline is between like $18 to like $26. MSRP. I haven't seen a Coraline Opus, with the exception of a rare size. I'm talking like the Robusto, the Perfection X, the Petite Lancero, the Super Bellicoso, Power Ranger, whatever. Those are all within that price range. And when you smoke it, if you like Dominican tobacco, then that is right. You're getting what you're paying for. It's a great, which when you get above 20, that's like upper shelf cigar quality, or it's supposed to be. And you're getting it. But now if you take that cigar and it's $40, $50, which is closer to like the Blues and the Forbidden X pricing from SRP, now a consumer is going to be like, all right, well, this wasn't much better than, this is an example I had at the shop, a Plasencia Amaforte. And it's like, yeah, well, it's the same price point. It's just for whatever reason, this person's selling the Opus for double the MSRP or triple the MSRP. So the consumer expectation's not being met when the product's not intended to be in that market.
Yeah, and Larry made a good point here. My palate is not refined enough to pay for those so-called luxury brands. I have no problem staying within a budget, which is totally fine. And there's a lot of people like that. There's a lot of people who they have a certain budget for cigars, and that's where they stay, and that's the reality. And there's a lot of companies out there that make cigars that that keep that in mind. And I think every manufacturer to an extent, pretty much, has something for everybody. There's not many companies out there that are exclusively luxury, per se. And I'm not talking about lines. I mean, just in their entire portfolio. I mean, most of the brands, everybody from the big guys to the little guys, have something in there, that everyone could afford, right? But you'll see that. I mean, and there's stuff out there that, maybe someone like Larry was like, you know what, I'm going to treat myself and get a couple. But when they go and if they actually find them or whatever, it's like, well, the MSRP is X, but that retailer has it for 3 or 4 times it. And it's like, well, now that cigar technically at MSRP, maybe, hey, you know what? I want to get one of these, but now they can't because the retailer's like, well, I'm going to mark it up, 300% because whatever. And I get it. And I get why people do it. And I get why people pay for it. I get why retailers do it. I get it. And I get why people won't pay for it, and there's a lot to be said there too. I mean, it's just not for everyone. Not everyone wants to pay it, and that's fine too. And that's not. I think that that's respectable too. Everyone's got other bills to pay. I mean, cigars are not the number one thing people spend their money on. People have lives that they need to attend to too. So of course. But it's unfortunate because I think it does hurt a lot of consumers out there too. Who it pushes them out of that availability. And it is what it is. But I think, having some conversations with a couple of manufacturers who've kind of picked up on this, it's something that they're not super pleased about. And again, I know there's not much they can do per se, but I don't know how they'll combat it. But I've heard some things recently.
I don't know. I mean, you just price protect it, but it's weird because usually it's the issue is if it's being marked too low. Like for instance, I know Padron heavily enforces that. Like if they find something that's being marked below MSRP, they will contact. I guess that's your Rolex example, is Padron.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're not pricing it where it's supposed to be, then
they will take it away. And Alan actually said, I worked for a manufacturer that cut off a big customer that was discounting cigars below MAP. So yeah, I mean, and especially when it's discounting, that's even worse. Like overcharging is one thing. It's different,
but discounting, because now it's, if I'm one retailer and say you're another one down the street and you're selling, we'll just take, because we just talked about Padron. You're selling Padron like 20% off a box purchase, and I'm doing just straight MSRP. Everyone's going to you now instead of me for Padron. I'm going to reach out to Padron and be like, what the hell? Like, why is your product getting sold cheaper here than my place? I'm not going to carry it.
Right. Yeah.
So,
very good point. And that's why, especially that's why it's it protects all the retailers. So
but
that
now
no
if
one's
you
getting
sell
undercut.
it 20% above MSRP, I'm not complaining about it because now I'm getting the customers because I'm cheap. But so that's the weird thing. But now if enough people do what I'm doing, like I'll be Matt's getting 20% over MSRP for Padron, I'm just going to copy what he's doing. I'm going to go like 15%, so I'm still a little cheaper. Now the brand's going to get that perception of it's worth more than you're getting. And I think that's where the issue comes in. That's kind of the topic of discussion now, is at what point does the manufacturer say, okay, well, now this is misrepresenting the brand. Like everyone's just kind of setting their own prices so far above what was intended. It's giving a negative perception on the brand now.
Yeah, and it is what it is to a degree too, And I only bring it up because it was a discussion I had with several people in the last couple of weeks, and I found it interesting, and it's an interesting topic, but there's not really a very clear solution without really pushing the envelope. So it's just kind of a tricky thing.
So Jay mentioned Prometheus, so I was right on that.
Oh, Jay.
Yeah, you can't screw with Prometheus.
Yeah, if you price bring this cigar other than MSRP, whether it's a penny high or low, they will call you and threaten to close your account. Yeah, see, but that's where that example comes back into play again, where it's you price protect the product because.
And I'm sure Jay will attest to that. There's some people that sell the singles out of the humidors, and that's a complete no-no.
The chests, not like the boxes, like when they come out with.
I think it has to be sold as a set, because I know, like for instance, from my perspective at Twins, people ask all the time if they can buy singles, and it's a strict no. Now, for instance, like the set, sets, like for instance, like a God of Fire box of 10, those are singles. Like
right, that's a regular box.
Yeah. But like the Opus 6s or the those you have to buy. You can't buy singles. Like
or when they have the cabinets.
Yeah, the cabinets, you can't buy singles out of those.
Because the cabinets technically come with like 10 boxes that are supposed to go inside.
Inside, yeah.
So you can't buy just the cabinet or just the cigars. You have to buy all of
The
it.
whole thing, yeah.
Which some of those are $10, $20, $30,000 because, you know, of how much the humidor is, how big it is, how many cigars come in. You know, like this, like the Purple Rain one, for example. I mean, we've talked about that one. That one's like what, 15 grand, 16,
Yeah.
17,000, because it comes with 180 cigars that are, you know, ultra rare and premium, that are very limited. You have the whole cabinet, which is not cheap in itself. And so you're buying that whole, you know, you're buying 180 super rare cigars with one of like 100 humidors that are made.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's expensive. You get what you pay for. But yeah, it has to be sold together. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm catching up on the comments here. They really started coming in. Sorry, I don't mean to keep going to Jay's comment, but as a retailer, I like getting his perspective on certain things. Sets, it depends. The Opus X Hemingway and the Opus 25 and Padron 50 and my Father Humidor and Prometheus cabinets, yes, it is a rule. So yeah, yeah, even you know, Padron, and my Father Humidor, the Prometheus. So Jay, let me ask you a question. So what about, like, for example, like you mentioned my father. So what about like the La Union? That
No, that was singles.
was
Yeah,
that
that
for
was
singles?
singles, yep,
That
that
wasn't
was
like you had to
singles.
buy the whole set.
No, that was singles.
Okay. Then my Father Humidor. So I assume he's talking about the 20th anniversary,
So
because that was the humidor that came, the blue one.
I don't know if that's what he's talking about. I think it's I think there was a special humidor made at the 2024 trade show.
I think you're right.
That's probably what they're talking about.
Yeah, I think you're right. That was separate from the original release.
Yeah.
Yes. I
Yeah,
think you're
those
right.
like the special limited release humidors I think are pretty strict. Like they want, even like Rocky does it too, like his white label humidor. I'm pretty sure he wanted that to be like a sell as is or do a giveaway for it, not to sell singles out of it.
Well, another example would be like Davidoff had, so when they do the year of every year,
Yep.
like the year of the rats, whatever, they've been doing, like, I'm pretty sure for like the least, I don't know if they've all done it, but, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I know for at least like the last 4 that I've, you know, really been involved with and covering, usually there's the regular release of the box of 10, and then there's like a humidor. So like when the dragon came out, when the snake came out, and I think the tiger did it too. It was like there was a standard box of 10 that came out that, you know, people could buy, and then there were different sizes that were made that came inside the limited edition humidors, and there was like 80 cigars in it of this particular size of that blend in a, you know, a numbered humidor. So like Davidoff's done that, and I think for Year of the Snake and Year of the Dragon, I believe there was 2 different sizes of 2 different humidors, and the idea was you buy it. You couldn't get the cigars without the humidor. You had to buy the humidor to get those cigars. You could not buy them separately. So, and again, I'm sure that's something that Davidoff's also enforced too, where it's like, if you buy that Year of the Dragon humidor, you're buying everything. You're not just getting the cigars and fuck the humidor, or vice versa. Like, I just want the humidor. No, you have to buy it all. So, if it's like 10 grand and you want the cigars, you're got to pay the 10 grand and buy the humidor too. You can't just get the cigars. So, and I'm sure even with some of those, I'm sure, you know, with Davidoff being what it is, I'm sure there's some people who, in some markets especially, because there's some markets where people pay shit crazy numbers for some of that Davidoff stuff, because it really is. It's a really high end brand, and people, you know, some of their stuff like that's limited. There's people out there who are hardcore Davidoff that with money, and they're gonna spend it. And I wouldn't be shocked if there's people who, you know, are charging even more insane amounts of money for some of those sets, because they're like, oh, we only got one of these limited edition humidors, you know, from like the whole world's supply, and you know, you gotta buy the set. And I don't think Jay gets any of those.
Yeah, I know Jay's comment about how sometimes retailers.
Well, first he said, I have a
Break that up.
Prometheus, a $12,700 humidor, and they want it sold as a set. Yes, I was referring to my Father humidor in 2022 and another one in 2024 to be sold as a set. And then I think you're talking about this one?
Well, yeah, sometimes, I mean, some of the stuff's so expensive, it's nearly impossible to sell it as a set.
Well, that's the other problem, too. Because there's plenty of retailers I walk into And I see these things still on the shelf. I'm like, yeah, didn't that come like 3 years ago? And they still have it because most people are not walking in there and being like, I'll 15 grand? Yeah, put it on my card.
Yeah.
And manufacturers make these products, and they're cool, and there are people in the whole planet, there are people who can afford to pay it, who probably would pay it. But you're talking about a very small percentage of people.
You're not forced to buy it. So if you buy that,
As a retailer.
you need to make that decision, you
Right.
know, and I'm sure when you're buying it, you're aware it's going to be a set. So it's just that, I mean, again, like, a lot of the time people want to get it because it's hard to get, and they're like, oh, I'll find a way to sell it or whatever. But Jay's point is correct, though. It's sometimes, like, you want to break it up, but, I mean, you can't.
So, Jay, since you're here and you're commenting on this particular topic, someone who obviously has had these humidors, has, won these sets, how often, have you, committed to these? Does it, is it something that, you only get one here and there? How long do you usually hang on to it? Like, like Pat was saying, you take the risk of committing to it when you actually buy it.
Well, I was going to say a lot of people typically sell it before you commit to it, which Jay just addressed, like when the customer backs out is when you kind of get screwed.
Right here.
So that is the only example I can think of where it's like you kind of wish you could break it up because, I mean, the customer backs out. I mean, that's why, like, my background, Twins, it's, we typically take the payment first, but a lot of the people with that much money, they don't want to take payment until they see it in person. So
of course.
That's a tricky situation. It is tricky, and it's backing out. I can predict how often that's done. That's sticky. And then Prometheus, I don't believe takes anything back. I don't think there's any argument you can make to them to take anything back. I haven't heard anything of them taking something back.
No, there's a few things that I own. Nothing that was that quite expensive, but some stuff that was pretty rare, when it went on sale. And people will see it and be like, oh, where'd you get that? And I'll be like, I walked into a retailer and it was sitting on the shelf and it was dusty and they just wanted to get rid of it. For example, I have the original, not the newer one that came out like 2 years ago. I have the original Don Carlos humidor. Like, the wooden one, the one that's out there. And people saying like, where'd you get that? That came out like 10 years ago or whatever. And I'm like, I went into a retailer a couple years ago and it was sitting on the shelf and I asked about it and I was like, hey, what's the deal with it? And they're like, it's been there for years. And then like, if you want it X amount, it's yours. And I counter offered and they said, sure. And they sold it to me. Now, the only thing that was a little annoying about that, and I really didn't care because I wanted the humidor and the cigars I could always get later, but it didn't have, that comes with like a box of, I think, Eye of the Shark or something, or was supposed to. I can't remember the original one.
Personal reserves.
Personal reserves, yes.
Yeah.
It came with one of the other rare Don Carlos cigars, and they had sold those separately. They just had the humidor, so like whatever. I didn't really care that much, but like there's another example. Like, well, they sold the cigars. They're gone now. They just have the empty humidor, and nobody wants it. So, but I got a very good deal on it. So, I was like, all right, well, how about for this? Like, I'll walk out of here with it now. And they're like, okay, yeah. And they just wanted to get rid of it. And I was like, okay. So sometimes if you're lucky, as a consumer, you wait around long enough and a store, is like, it's taking up shelf space. I've had it forever. Like, let's get rid of it. Even if they break even, let's get it out of my store. I can put something else in that space that I could sell. They're going to get rid of it.
Yeah, I think it's weird too because, my background with retail, again, like I think it's the demographic of types of consumers you have plays a big role in it. But I've never seen humidors do really well in the sense that, there's so many, especially I feel like the past few years, again, like I've only been in the industry for 5 years. So this is probably a common thing. But I feel like the past few years there's been a lot of exclusive humidors made for certain cigars. And I just, at least with the demographic that I work with, I don't see humidors being a huge thing for people buying. I don't think there's a big appeal for it. I think it's a very specific consumer that buys those, like a collector type person.
Yeah.
That buys them. And, like the rare cigars that come in them, I don't think it's enough for somebody to be like, oh, I'm going to buy that humidor. And, Like one of my examples is so a humidor that I think is really cool that we still have at Twins is the J.C. Newman American one that they did for the NBA.
Oh, you guys have one of
We
those?
have one, and I mean,
Oh,
I'm not
nice.
a basketball guy.
Yeah.
But if I was, like, holy shit, I would have that in a heartbeat. Just because it's like
That's the one they built out of the floor, right? The actual
Yeah.
playing floor from
and
like
it
the
shows
All-Star
you there's a
game.
piece of paper that comes in it that shows you the exact part of the court that was used. And
Yeah, that's
it has
right.
all the players that played on it. So like someone
Like
like
Kobe
me,
played
like
on it.
if I was a basketball guy, like if they did something for football like that, which I don't know how you would do that, but say like for instance like there was a football thing that was made with, I don't know, like there's no wood in football, so I guess it's a bad example, but say like pretend like there was wood in football and they made a humidor out of it, right?
Yeah.
I would buy that in a heartbeat. That's sick.
Didn't
but-
somebody make a humidor out of baseball bats? Like
So that was
MLB
this
used?
year's J.C. Newman one was with baseball bats.
Yeah, that's
A little
what it
bit
was.
less cool in my opinion, but because like I mean the NBA one, it's the floor of the All-Star game.
And
Like,
you can
can't-
touch the actual.
Yeah, it's that's insane. But other than that, like I haven't seen a humidor that's come out that people are like, oh my god, I really want this humidor. And I've even seen it like some giveaway stuff for events that it's how many ashtrays and humidors do people need? It seems like every event that comes up, it's like, oh, here's a free ashtray. It's like, oh, let me go add this to my closet collection of cigar ashtrays. And humidors is kind of the same thing. I think you kind of see those more, I don't want to say inexpensive, but the giveaway humidors. You see a lot of those going up for the events now too. I haven't seen a big humidor clientele. To me, I mean again, but it works. People buy them. I think just with the people that I've worked with, it's never been a big thing. Like it's people just want like the basic Savoy humidor. They don't want some extravagant multi-$1,000 humidor.
Well, I just thought about this, and I'm like, well, like we talked about bourbon before, right? So when we talk about like people charging thousands of dollars for like Pappy and Buffalo Trace Antique and some of that other stuff, the reality is the wholesale on those bottles is still like double digits. So when they're asking for those prices, even if they sell them, at a very reasonable price, they're not losing money on it because they bought into it for, like George T. Stagg MSRP, all of them, all the BTAC bottles, the William LaRue, the Eagle 17, the MSRP is $99. That's what the MSRP is on that bottle. You often see them for, anywhere between like 900 to just under 2,000. So you get to figure the retailer is probably getting it for what, $50-$60, So even if they sell it at $200 because they give up and they're like, all right, here $300, they're still making way more than they would have on their margin, because that's just a gouge. That's just an over gouge. This stuff's different. It's still a lot up front to spend to get into it, and now you're seeing like, I don't know if you've noticed, like there's the Weller Millennium now, which I didn't really know much about, but I saw it popping up, and like I think its MSRP is like $6,000. So it's like, well, who's paying for that? Like who's spending $6,700 on a bottle of limited Weller? I mean,
There's a clientele for it. I just feel like
it's crazy.
In the cigar industry, it just seems like there's so many people making some special humidor.
It's getting out of hand now. It's not even like special anymore. It's like everyone's got something that's super
like
limited.
Before 2020, was that common? Like I don't know if it was common. Again, I'm only speaking to my time there, but I just know from 22 to now, it seems like limited humidors.
It's definitely a lot more today
is
than it's
common.
ever been.
It's
Yes.
very common, and it's in a way it's frustrating too, because a lot of the time those limited humidors you can't sell the singles, and the cigar is only made for that humidor.
Yeah.
So from a consumer standpoint, you're like, I can't get the new shit because I can't spend 20 grand or 15, 10 grand on a humidor that I don't need. And it's tough. And I get kind of rewarding the consumer, like the diehard consumer that buys that humidor to have that special cigar. But with it being such a common thing now, I'll take an example too. Like one that I was let down by is the Hemingway House humidor for Fuente. I think it was the Opus 25 in that I think it was the Untold Story size. I think.
The LA Blue one that looked like the Hemingway house?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I would buy that humidor if I could, but it's that cigar that was in it. I was like, oh my God, I want to smoke that so bad. But it's only in that humidor.
Yeah, you can only buy it.
And I'm like, there's no way you can't get it.
Yeah.
So, and I get it because something like that, like, and the thing is, I'd be shocked if you see any of those around now because something like that people buy. Like, you have diehard people that are going to buy
Oliva did one too. Oliva did the same thing. And then,
Yep.
Oliva had one that was very similar. They had one made, I think LA Blue also did that one.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure. And it was modeled after their factory in Nicaragua. And it came with the cigars. And, I know Oliva's not traditionally a name people would think like, oh, like overpaying for, but you have to, Oliva's still a big name. Everybody knows Oliva, and Oliva does make great cigars. When they come out with a product like that, that there's going to be people looking for it. And, there's probably some shops that probably tried to squeeze a little bit more juice out of it because they're like, wow, we're only getting one. And, I'm not just going to give it away. Let me try to use this as a little like bonus token.
Yeah.
Which, and as a business owner, I understand that. I understand the concept of trying to get a little bit more for something that has such a heightened demand because someone will probably pay for it. But I think the problem is it starts off kind of here and then, more people do it and then it starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And now you have all these products out there. It's like, who's fucking buying them? Like it's cigars.
Yeah,
like who's buying it?
Yeah, it's being overdone. Like I like that, like, because we mentioned my father. Like they did the blue in a humidor, but it was more of a retail friendly humidor. It wasn't like the LA Blue, like extravagant humidor, but it was still a nice packaging for it, and it could be used as a humidor. I like that because it's you can buy singles, it's affordable, but then if you buy the box, you get this nice humidor.
Yeah.
I like that, but the really rare, limited, expensive humidors, I feel like it seems like every press release, there's a new LA Blue cigar humidor for some brand, and it's like, and I it's not fair to say in the sense because they don't make a lot of them. It's not like they're trying to sell like 20,000 of these things. Like
right.
It's not supposed to be a big release. It's like this is an option for people to buy it if they want something like this. It's not like they're making their entire marketing strategy based on selling these things, but a lot of releases I feel like is those types of humidors, and it's increased in frequency I feel these past few years.
Well, you can almost take this conversation and kind of transition into a different topic, which kind of comes up from time to time. Not even just with us, but a lot of the media. This is a very common discussion. Are there too many limited edition products in general? Whether they're just, affordable or not. Like, when I first started smoking cigars, there was some limited edition products that, from time to time you say, oh, this is a limited run, something special we're doing. Okay. Since 2020, it seems like every brand at some point in the year, almost every brand, I know not everybody, but almost every brand, even the small boutique people now, I see like guys who like debuted in the last 24 to 36 months,
Have limited, yeah.
Oh, they have 2 core lines out, and they're like, oh, we're doing our first limited. It's like, what? Like, no disrespect and no offense, but, you kind of like, you do a limited edition, once you kind of made your name and people know who you are, and like, there's a reason, there's brands out there where I'm like, you're doing a limited already? What's so special about that though? Like you're still trying to build your core line. You're doing a limited for what? When one of the old school guys does a limited, it's like, well, like when Padron does a limited, when Fuente does a limited, when Oliva does a limited, when LFD does a limited, it's like, well, established company, like they've been around for 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years. It makes sense. And you see people who've been to the trade show twice, they got 2 lines. And then, we're doing a limited edition. It's like, why?
So I have...
Why, because I feel like there's a sense of, like, oh, we got to do an LE. Everyone's doing an LE. We got to do one. It's like, but I think people are losing the sense of what the LE was supposed to be. Now it's just like, for some people, I think it's just a quick cash grab, which I get it. Some people, we want to have a limited... Maybe they think it's going to bring people into the brand, which I think in some situations that's true, and I think other situations it's not, or like it won't work. Even, that might be the mentality, but I think it might not work for them that way because people still don't know who the fuck you are. You know what I mean? And again, no disrespect to you. It's just, how do you expect someone to get excited about a limited edition product when most people don't even know who you are at all? Like, oh, who's this company that's limited? Oh, like, what's your core line? I've never even had it. You should be more worried about people knowing your core line first, before you start pushing LEs on everybody.
I have an interesting kind of opinion about that. So I guess I have two main points to that. I'll go with the easier one first, and that's the, I guess, brand identity. And I think, we'll just take, because in my opinion, the godfather of limited releases is Pete Johnson.
Yeah.
And I think people look at him and what he turned Tatuaje into, and they're like, I want to do that. And I think that people think that getting the new limited cigar that everyone kind of gets that cult following for is the recipe to success. And this is an interesting conversation. I mean, I'll mention it of him by name because it's kind of a shout out to Ashton. But like when we were talking to Andy Green about Ashton, I was saying, like, why don't you do like an event cigar? Because we were talking about like ashtrays. How many ashtrays do you need? And he said, like, because our brand's built on, you can smoke one of our cigars, and if you put it down for a little bit, 5 years down the road, you can pick it up again. There's nothing that we sell that you're not going to be able to get at some point. And
Perdomo's the same way.
Perdomo's the same way, and that's what they built their brand on, is you're always going to get this cigar. And so that's like, I guess that's more of a traditional approach, and it does very well for them. And so I think that, some people want to build their base on, what's the new limited thing. And I think the other point that I'll drive on that is, I think when the younger generation, like my generation, now I don't really care a lot about limiteds. I think they're annoying because typically I like them and then you can't get them again, which is obnoxious. And then a lot of the time the limiteds aren't great, but when they're good, it sucks that they're limited. But I think so my generation is like the generation of capsule drops. So in clothing, for instance, like when there's a capsule drop, everyone's like, oh my God, I got to buy it. Like look at the NFL, like when they do the
look at the sneaker people.
Yeah, like the Color Rush uniforms. Like the Color Rush uniforms. Everyone had to buy the blue and red Patriots jersey for the Color Rush, or like when they do the veterans jerseys, they got to buy the camo jersey. It's like a capsule drop. It's a limited thing, and people buy them. They're gone. They only make so many of them, and they're basically all going to sell. And I think my generation likes that kind of exclusive capsule. Like it comes out once, you buy it, and then after that's gone, the next one comes out. It's going to be different. So I think maybe that type of marketing is being brought into the cigar industry with the newer brands. And it's tough because I do think that traditional approach to legacy brands on have a consistent good core line is what makes you succeed. Because I mean, even like with Pete, now I think you have like Tatuaje smokers who are just exclusively limited tat smokers. Like there's the limited releases come out, they buy them, and they won't touch a brown label. But then you also have people that smoke the brown label,
right? And
then they enjoy the limited stuff. So Pete's kind of done it both ways. But I think a lot of people do those. And I mean, there's some people that do, like, I mean, there's limited releases that companies do. Like, for instance, like we'll take CAO, the Amazon Basin. Like, that's a limited release, but it is an annual release. So it's not really a true limited edition. It's like a yearly.
If you miss out this year, you can get it next year.
You get it next year. But when it comes to just these, I guess I'll call them the capsule drops. Like, oh, get this specific cigar. It's made out of this crop that you're never going to get again, and blah. It's, I think that gets kind of old, but maybe some people like it. I've never been attracted to that kind of marketing just because, like, I don't know. I just don't care for it.
Well, I'll build on kind of what you were saying. I think for me, like, I can see where having too many limiteds, you get to a point where, especially if you're like really drawn to that stuff, especially if you're you're fans of a lot of brands that do a lot of limited, you find yourself buying boxes of limiteds all the time, and you have a set budget on what you're going to spend on cigars throughout a year, and you end up buying a lot of boxes of limited stuff because you're like, oh, like I don't want to miss out. I can always get whatever because it's always on the shelf. I got to get this now. And then what happens is you end up buying all these limiteds all year, and then you stop buying core line stuff because you're like, well, I can always buy that, but I got to buy this now. And then you look back and you're like, all I bought was LEs all year. And that's all I bought. I didn't buy any core line stuff. And then you're sitting there going like, oh, I don't have any of these. Like, oh, I got to get a box. And you're like, oh, I don't want to spend $230 on that. Because, I already bought like so many cigars this year. When you look back, you're like, what did I buy? Oh, I bought a bunch of limited editions that like, that's it. And again, and it's not like to say that it was a waste. I mean, a lot of those cigars are good. You'll never get them again. But it's like, people kind of get stuck into this, and I think that's why more and more people are coming out with them, because there's a lot of consumers now that are just in that cycle of like, oh, limiteds, I got to grab them. So people keep getting them, and manufacturers keep making them. And I think it's gotten to a point now where it's, a little bit more every year. More and more manufacturers like, oh, well, we got to do a limited edition. Like, oh, you know what? We got to do one this year because, like, have you seen what's going on with these limiteds? Like, we got to do one next year. And then they have one. And it's like, oh, and then people got to buy that one. And then it's like, and Jay made a comment quoting Ronnie Haysha.
After that, I have a comment on what you just said to see if your opinion changes.
I forget where it is. It was just in here. He said, oh, yeah. And he said, right here. He said, Ronnie Haysha says, it's best to stop making limited editions if no one is buying your core lines. That's a good point, too. But what were you going to say?
So off of your point then, so what about store exclusives then? Because we see a bunch of those.
That's another good point.
And they're
exclusives.
They're limited, but they're store exclusives.
So it's like it's almost like it's even more limited because at least like most limited editions are nationwide or some are worldwide, like the big like Davidoff and Arturo Fuente and General and whoever the bigger guys that sell all over the world. But the medium-sized companies, it's like just U.S. But you're right.
I think almost everyone. I mean, I can name more people that have done store exclusives than people that haven't. I mean, even Fuente, the Casa Fuente. Granted, now that's no longer store exclusive, but originally that was only Casa Fuente.
Well, it is. I mean, it is to an extent. I mean, they still don't really send a lot of them out.
But everyone can get it now for the most. You know what I mean? Like
it's most sorta, yeah.
good accounts can get it.
Well, there isn't really a store exclusive. I mean, it is, but it's also it's made for that store. Like that's like kind of the point.
So I'm
of that
talking
cigar.
like a true, like for instance.
But I think what you mean is like an independent retailer who like had worked up a deal with someone like Saka. 'Cause Saka does a fair amount of them. He'll do like the U-boat, for example. That's with I believe that's with Rocky's cigars. That's a store exclusive that comes out every year. It's just for that store. He did one for Federal in Portsmouth, right in our neighborhood,
well,
for the 100th anniversary.
The CANH one coming out, I think actually this month, I want to say.
Oh, is it already?
I think so.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
But I see a lot of people do it, which I'm not saying it's bad, but it's limited edition.
I will admit
almost
though.
The same thing.
I will admit though, let me tell you something, and I'm not trying to brag or pat myself on the back, but in my time as a cigar smoker, almost 10 years now, I've bought a lot of cigars, lots and lots of cigars, especially before. When I was single, like you, yeah. I mean, I was buying 2-3 boxes a week. It was bad, But I was young and I had the money and I had nothing else going on. But my point is, in all of that buying, I bought a lot of limiteds. I bought a fair amount of core line stuff to keep certain things on hand. But out of all the stuff I would buy that was limited, for me, most of it was national release limiteds. I didn't really buy a lot of store. I mean, there was some stores, like for example, like I've bought my fair share of boxes of the Firecracker from United. Because there's a lot of those where I'd be like, I want to get that one, like the Christoph one and the Perdomo one and the EP Carrillo one, and like there was a bunch of them. And I think the one that Nick Melillo did with Yellow Wednesday. Those, yeah, like store exclusive, but well, I shouldn't say that because United's really like national shit, but I would say before. I think there was a period before they were really nationally distributed. That may not have been the best example, but I don't think they've always been national. I think that was fairly recent. And Dave and everyone over there can correct me on that. But my point is like there would be certain things, yeah, I would get, but for the most part, for me personally, store exclusives, I mean, not really. I've bought them. Believe me, there's stuff I've bought. Like the pancetta years ago when I originally went through like my hardcore Liga phase where I just smoked Liga for like 3 months straight. Like I went and I bought the box of pancetta from Wooden Indian in Pennsylvania. But me personally, I don't buy a lot of store exclusives. Not because I'm against them, I just don't, I guess. But there are people who do. When's the last time you guys at Twins had a store exclusive?
We rarely do. I mean, Christoph made one for our 25th, and that's one of the top selling SKUs we actually
That's right, they did. I remember that.
Yeah, it's insane how much that sells. And we don't have a big online presence. It's all like within house, and that's like one of the exceptions with what I've seen that actually sticks. But I've never been a big exclusive fan in general. Like, I mean, early days of me smoking, I would get excited for the PCA releases. More so now, not really. But I mean, how many limiteds can you make? I mean, I just feel like
that's my point.
It's overdone now in a sense.
It's to the point where everyone's got a limited, and it's like, like, even if the same manufacturers always come out with a limited, right? There's enough brands out there coming out with a limited every year.
Yeah, you just don't really care.
You have, and you can always buy a limited edition of something. So then you end up having this collection,
which I like,
of limited editions. So it's kind of like, it's not even cool in the sense because you're like, well, this is limited, but I also got this limited, I got this limited.
And
it's
I mean,
like, it was fun when it was like you had one box that was like, this is a limited edition, and like that was all you had because that was all that you could get. Now it's like, well, I could buy like 5 different things that are limited edition, and like, I don't know. That's just my perspective of it.
And I think I'll just use Tad as an example because I think they do it the right way. Just because, again, was Pete's kind of, I think he's the ripple in the industry that caused this to happen. Like, for the most part, Tad limiteds are just a different size and something that he's made. You know, like the TAA and the PCAs that come out every year. On like blending's probably different. It's different by tobacco, whatever. But at its core, I've noticed it's the same cigar every year, but a different size. That's something I'm more okay with because it's the same. It's like an annual release, like we were talking about, except it's just a different size. And then the Supreme Leaf, I think they do it well as well. It's the same blend, but it's a different size every year. But it's an annual release.
Correct.
So that's that
different
kind
size.
Of stuff I like. I like those kinds of limiteds because you might like the Robusto more than the Toro that comes out. You know, it's different every year, so it's interesting. But like when it comes to like, you know, someone makes, this is a 1,000 box production release once in a lifetime. It's never coming out again. But it's that kind of stuff. I'm just like, whatever. I don't know. That's just where I'm at. There was a point that I would get really geeked out over some of that stuff, but I think now it's just, I mean,
it's lost its luster.
Yeah, like and a lot of the time you smoke them and you're like, it wasn't that much better than the core line, or it wasn't that, you know, there's always, I think it's more of just saying you did it now. Like you said, not everyone, but
well, the other thing too is it's turned people into collectors.
And that's the other part of it too, is like I mean, people come in and they buy it. I mean, which I don't think is necessarily a bad. I'm almost like, it's weird.
It's a very strange concept in general. I mean, that's why we're having the conversation. I mean, you know, because
I'll take the Halloween cigars, for instance, like the dress boxes. Like,
right.
A lot of the people buy that for the box. It's not as... Because you can just get the non... what does he call them? He comes out with 2. One of them's a dress box, and the other one's like one of them's numbered, and the other one's not numbered. It's
they do that with the Alfonso as well. United does that with the Alfonso. Because you can buy the nice, you know, beautiful box, or Selected actually offers just a raw square. And it says Alfonso on it, but it's just a raw box. And the idea is like if you buy the first box, then you basically buy the refill, essentially. You just buy like the stock box, and you take them out and you put them in the original box.
Yeah.
Or if you don't have it and you just don't give a shit, I don't know if there's a price difference because you're not buying like the dress box. I can't remember. There might be. I have to ask. But like I know they have those. So and Padron has it with the 50th humidor, but the only way you can even buy it is you have to have the certificate that comes with the humidor. At least it was. I don't know if it still is, but
I think it is.
I think it's still that way where you have to like show them like, oh, I own one, and then you can buy the refill. You can't just buy like the empty thing of 50th. You have to be like, oh, I own the humidor, and then they'll sell it to you.
Yeah.
So like you run into that, but like I know what you mean. It's true. I mean, sometimes people buy shit because they want the box design or whatever. Perfect example. I remember when Matt Booth came out when he brought the Namakumi back a few years ago, and he had the 10 count box, and then he had the chest, which was still 10 count, but it was it was bigger and it was individual coffins. I was like, I want that because it was purple and it was big and it was cool and I loved the design on it. And I think Matt signed that for me too. I have it put away. But like that's a cool piece. It's a cool piece to have that even when the cigars are gone. Like it's a nice decorative thing for the lounge. So sometimes there's things like that where I buy it because like, well, I want the memento of that design because like his shit's very artistic and it's like I want that because it's a cool display piece. But not every limited is like that. Sometimes it's like it's cool, but like it's it's a limited because of the cigar is cool. But so I guess there's different reasons why you might buy certain things too, especially for me, and I'm sure for you too. But regardless, it's still kind of getting to a point where there's just too many of them out there. And it's ridiculous. And then you get into a situation too where, for us, it's like, well, you're going to get it and review it. So it's like, well, and then, does it go on the list? And the rule with us is, store exclusives don't count. But if it's a national release, even if it's a limited, it counts for that year. So then it's like, in addition to all the core line stuff that comes out, we have to track down and, smoke and take into consideration. Then you have all these limiteds that you're tracking down that might be a little bit harder to come by. Because you have to try. Well, what about that? Well, we have to track that down and get it into the rotation so we can take it into consideration. And it becomes, and I'm sure Coop would probably attest to that too. It becomes like you're also chasing people like us doing what we do. Now you're chasing all the limiteds down because you have to be able to be able like, well, we smoked it and tried it, to consider it for cigar of the year or whatever. So I've run into that too, where sometimes I'm like, oh, I got to grab that, and I got to grab this, and I got to grab this, and it's not even because I necessarily always just really want something. It's because I'm like, well, I have to get them and get them in my queue of rotation. So
well, I think like the point that I kind of drove originally is kind of a good kind of finishing point for it. Is like there's people that's their entire market is I want to buy limited stuff. And I mean, you look at like a bunch of cigar clubs, the monthly packs, it's all limited stuff. I think there's a market for it. And I think when companies release these and they kind of meet their quota in doing it, I think their target is those kind of more niche people. It's not really people like us where we're everyday smokers and we smoke, everything, right? I don't think we're the target for that.
Because remember, there's a lot of people, not to jump in there, but to your point, what's interesting, remember in this industry, clientele-wise and demographically, there's still a lot of, older consumers who've been around longer than we have smoking cigars who, are part of what the cigar industry really was, where, Larry comes in and he buys, LFD, L300s. That's what he buys. That's the only thing he buys. It's the only thing he smokes. That's all he buys. He doesn't give a shit about any other brand, let alone a limited edition. Even when LFD's got the Bull, he probably don't give a shit about the Bull. I smoke L300s. That's what I smoke. I don't give a shit about the Bull. Oh, limited. I smoke this. There's a lot of customers out there who still like, this is what I buy. I know two guys has their Dos Hombres line. And they sell in bundles. And, they're reasonably priced. They're good cigars. I remember I used to hang out in Dave's shop down in Salem years ago. And, I'd watch these guys come in. Be like, let me get 2 bundles of, whatever Dos Hombres. And that's it. And I'd be like, oh, that's cool. And, people working the shop would be like, yeah, he comes in like every other week, buys 2 bundles. That's all he buys. That's all he buys. And there's still a lot of people like that too, And I think that kind of what you said earlier about like your generation being like really into the capsule stuff. Well, the circle of life, people get older and they die, and the new demographics come in. So like, as time goes on, that demographic of the cigar consumer is getting older, and they will go away, and the younger generation comes in behind. So this new generation that's coming in is really all about that. So like that exclusive buying person, that demographic eventually will go away based on the trends that we see, and then it will become, well, everyone just likes to buy all random shit all the time. So that also, I think, is a huge influence on the rise of this stuff too, is you have more and more of these people from the newer generations who are getting, older and into cigars now, and it's like, well, we like this kind of thing, and now it's becoming the thing. But even 10 years ago, but 20 years ago, a limited edition would come out, and it was like, oh shit, did you see what Tatuai is doing? They got this limited, like, oh wow, like they got a limited, that was like the talk of the town. But now it's like, Tatuai's got a limited. Yeah, he's got like 4, and so does everyone else in the store. It's like, okay, cool. What's his limited for? And some people do it for a reason. Some people have like a special thing. Oh, we're doing this because it's an anniversary release. All right, makes sense. Oh, we're doing this to honor someone, or all right, that's cool. And sometimes it's like, we're just doing it, because we wanted to do it in this size, so it's whatever. Oh, all right. And again, it's not like a knock against it, but it's just it becomes so regular.
Yeah.
But you're right. The demographic for that is increasing. So then it just becomes the mainstay.
And the last thing I'll say about it is from like a retailer standpoint, it's not. I'm sure Jay could probably comment on this as well, but I don't think retailers are huge fans of it either. Just because, you go back to shelf space, like, especially if it's a brand that doesn't sell well and they're coming out of a limited edition, like they don't buy the core line, they just limited comes out. Retailers aren't going to put the shelf space for that.
Mm-mm.
And it's one thing if it's like, Tatuaje, where it's like, okay, well, the limiteds are going to sell because he has that clientele.
Right.
But a lot of the time, like I know from like the days I was at Twins, it's limiteds. We'll get limited certain ones, but there's some that it's like nah, just because it doesn't make sense. Like the shelf space. The core line's not moving. Why are we gonna get this limited?
Especially brands who don't have a reputation for a limited, and then they come out with one. And I'm not saying that it's like they shouldn't, but to your point, there's brands that have the reputation when we do limited editions. So there's a customer base that's always aware of that too. Then you have a company that they've been around for 10 years. They've never done all of a sudden, boom, we have a limited. Unless you're really on top of your core line and your customer base, and people might not. I don't want to say not give a shit, but like it just might not hit the way some of these other brands will, because it's not. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, I like those. I smoke them when I go in there from time to time, but that customer might not be someone who's always into limiteds, whereas a diehard Tatuaje fan, will tell you like, oh, like I love Tat, and it's like, well, I buy all the core line stuff, but like I also know Pete's gonna come out with this, and this every year, so I'm always prepared for that. So it's you're right to an extent. I think brand to brand, it also kind of varies too, because you're gonna make shelf for people like Tatuaje, who everyone always knows is gonna be limiteds, and then let's say Christoph, out of the blue, they come out with a limited, and it's like, okay, that's nice, but do I think my customers are going to go for a Christoph limited? Because traditionally, the people who buy, and I'm just using them as an example. This is not anything against them. It just is an example of a company who doesn't do a lot of them. The guy who comes in and smokes Christoph usually, is he the kind of guy who gives a shit about a limited, or is he like, well, no, I just want to smoke what I always smoke? So there is a lot of variables, I think, with it too, where it affects, retailer bringing it in, puts it on the shelf, making the space, like you said, because that space is money. It is. It may not seem that way, but the reality is when you walk into a store and you see a box on the shelf, each box on that shelf, that spot that box is in, that's money. It's money right there. It's time, it's money, it's investment. So you got to be wise with what you put there in that space. It's this much space, but it's a lot. It's worth a lot more than it looks. You know, so it's worth a lot more than the one box that's sitting there at the time. So you got to be smart. You got to be smart. So yeah, I mean, I like how we kind of started at one point and kind of rode the wave into that. But it's an interesting discussion because it's something that's happening in every shop every day, and there's a lot of comments on it from all, you know, from the retailers and the manufacturers and media and even the consumers who have said like, I don't give a shit about that, or like, people who just get wrapped up in like, I only buy limiteds because, like, you know, they're all about collecting, and which is cool, but it's just a weird universe now with the limiteds. It's become so much more than it ever was, especially in the cigar industry. So, which, by the way, I wanted to mention, our friends at SC Dupont are always with us, featuring the Legrand lighter that now pings. I know you have your Biggie with you, which I know that was a favorite lighter on the team this year. That was the Biggie. That was fantastic. How, now that you've been using it, like, are you really enjoying the flat flame, or do you prefer regular jet torch?
So I'm a flat flame guy. The first one I used was Prometheus's.
Oh yeah.
But I like how the Biggie has like the double flat flame, so it's wider.
Yeah.
Because the only critique I had was it was like a single flame in the sense that, well, I mean, it's not. I mean, it's like whenever I have a flat flame, when I was working at Twins, I would always sell through them because, like, I like how it's narrow, so you can do like a precise touch up with the flat flame. But if you twist it vertical, now it's a wider flame to toast and light your cigar with. So I just think it's everything you need, right? It's so I've always, and then the fact that the Biggie is wider, I don't think there's any other lighter that does that. There might be, I just don't know of it. But this is probably my favorite. Other than, I mean, my favorite lighter's a line too, but when it comes to a jet lighter, that's my favorite jet lighter.
I'd say probably because the Biggie, I think, is the Biggie, and I think the Mega Jet is the same torch that the Biggie has. Just the Mega Jet's a bigger lighter. The Slimmy has it's a flat flame, but it's smaller, like the Slim 7.
Mm-hmm.
It's a flat flame, but it's a much more narrow flame. And I agree. I think with the Biggie, it's nice because you get that flat flame that gets so many different uses for it. And you got plenty of room with it. Whereas the others are nice, but they're a little small. So when you're on a larger ring gauge, it's a little bit more work, where that can still comfortably light even a smaller ring gauge cigar without overdoing it because of the design of the flame. It covers a lot of sizes. In fact, I think it covers most of the sizes outside of probably like the ridiculous ones like the 100 ring cigars. I think the last time I smoked one of those, I ended up using like a brulee torch, like you would use in a kitchen for like creme brulees and stuff like that. Because like I have one, you know, and it's bigger. It's not quite like a full size like a blow torch, but it's bigger than the average, you know, lighter. I think I used that last time for one because it was like, I just don't want to sit here with like, you know, even like a 3-jet, like, because it still takes a lot. I'm like, I'm just gonna use this and like get the thing lit, like. But you know, again, regardless of that, the average cigar, I think you're right. That covers small sizes up to, you know, like 60 ring, you know, comfortably, without over torching. So it's nice. I really like that lighter. It's a cool little lighter, and you know, it's really well made, and it has a lot of good uses. So ask your local retailer for ST Dupont products and shake up the legacy. Outside of that, I was going to bring up one thing. I think I sent it over to you. There was an interesting announcement that was made or last year. I think it was last fall. General acquired Sutliff and all the Mac Baren brands. And they recently announced that they were going to be discontinuing a lot of stuff. And which I think some people saw coming. Tends to be common when you make an acquisition, I guess. You know, and it's interesting because, you know, I was having this conversation with somebody, and I can't remember. I think I was having it with Carney the other night. I think it was after the show. I don't think was it on the show? It might have been on the show. There was who did they buy? General bought. So General's in the last few years they bought Alec Bradley and Room 101 brands, which they have continued to sell and they market and they're working on and they're doing stuff. And then you have there was a brand that they acquired years ago, or a few years ago, Royal Agio. I don't know if you remember Royal Agio. And it's funny because several people this has come up in conversation. When the other two were being bought, it was like, oh, is this going to go like Royal Agio, where they acquired them and then it just kind of disappeared. They just gone. And so then they acquired Sutliff, and now you're already seeing we're cutting all this out, which you can't really be too shocked by. I mean, that's generally what you do. You buy something for the stuff that's valuable. You find the dead weight, you cut it off. But is it? How much trimming are they going to do? Is there going to be more trimming? Is this just slowly shutting that brand down and getting it out of the way? Is it a competitive thing? But we're starting off the year. Yep, cutting all this out. It's gone, and I'm curious. I'm curious if they continue to do that with some of the other stuff that they've acquired recently. Just because of some things I've seen and some trends with the way it's been going, I'm wondering how much of this are they going to continue to keep afloat? Are they going to get rid of this? Because even though General's a big company with a lot of different brands, you can't just have an infinite amount of SKUs. You still have to trim stuff down. And if you acquire stuff too, why do you acquire other companies? It's competitive. You buy people out. Maybe you can sell those brands, or maybe you buy them just to get rid of them. And at some point, General has so many SKUs in their portfolio, that it can't keep it all the time. So I think you're going to see some more and more of this stuff going away as time goes on. And I think they're still buying people. I mean, I don't think they're done buying other companies. I think I'm willing to bet you see another one, maybe even two more acquisitions from them this year. I do. I think you see at least one more, maybe two. And depending on who it is, maybe it sticks around, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just buy it, go away. We saw it happen with Nat Sherman. Altria bought Nat Sherman, and it stuck around for a while, but then it was like, all right, we're done with cigars. We'll keep the cigarettes because, remember, they're a big tobacco company. They're not a cigar company. So cigars went away. The Nat Sherman International brand died. That's gone. I mean, Herklotz revived the brands or whatever, which is something he did separately, but, it went away. So, and Twins is a big pipe store. They do a lot of pipe tobacco too, so I'm curious to see, some of the feedback from some of the other people. I know there's some other people that are a lot more into pipes than you are, and obviously a customer base too. It's another thing.
Well, I needed to know a lot about pipes because of how big Twins is in pipes.
Yeah, they're very big.
But pipe tobacco is a weird animal because, I could probably do a show with you specifically on pipe tobacco because I don't think it's talked about enough. And I know our
we should do
outlet
one.
Isn't really focused towards that area of the premium tobacco industry, but it's definitely something I like to talk about. But no, pipe tobacco is just weird because there's a lot of different types, and when we talk about limiteds, I think pipe tobacco does more limiteds than cigars. Every year there's always limiteds in pipe tobacco
because I imagine they have so many different blends that they're always
and it's easier to do. I mean, I wouldn't say it's easier to do, but it's I mean, the joke is pipe nerds, right? It's people get really into it, and it's more of that kind of, I don't want to call it a collector, but pipe people like to try new things.
It's a different experience.
It's
smoking
different,
cigars, yeah.
And it's weird because I think a lot of people are going to be upset about discontinuing these SKUs because with pipe people, I feel so people like what they like, and I think pipe tobacco smokers are scattered amongst what they smoke. I mean, obviously, 1Q is going to be the top selling pipe tobacco, but it's and Captain Black's obviously going to always be a top seller. But people there's going to be people that only smoke one of the brands that's getting discontinued because there's not often pipe tobaccos that someone doesn't smoke every day. It's just everyone's scattered. But when it comes to the business perspective, it's well, ROI, are we really making money off of this? And if we get rid of this person's probably just going to go here, which most of the cases, that's what's going to happen. Is it's going to move to pipe tobacco. But it's weird. It is weird. I think it's going to get some pushback, but it's It's business. And I think when a big company buys out smaller companies, especially in the pipe realm of the industry, there's going to be discontinues, and it's tough because it's more of a niche group of people.
Yeah, I
And
could see that.
so it's yeah.
Pipe, I went through a short experience with pipes because out of curiosity, and I there was part of me that was like, all right, I need to like just take a little bit of time and and I know enough about it to engage in conversation, but I haven't smoked enough pipe tobacco to like, you know, have like a serious conversation with a serious pipe cigar smoker. And it's generally not my thing. I don't mind it. Like, especially in the right setting, in the right mood. If we were like, hey, Wednesday or like Friday night, I'm going to come over. Why don't we do pipe? I'll sit down here and I'll spend 3 hours and I'll smoke pipe tobacco with you. And I'll enjoy it. It's not something I do every day. But, I'll enjoy it. But it's a different animal. And I think you're right. I think the consumer who smokes pipe is different. I don't think there's do you find in your experience, let me ask you this question before I just make my assumption. Working at Twins, at least, big pipe store, would you say most of the people who come in for pipe, they only smoke pipe? They're not also cigar smokers too, that they kind of do both.
You get both.
Is it pipe and cigars, or are there actually a lot of people who do both?
You get a lot to do both. I mean, there is some deady pipe smokers. I'd say maybe half of what we have at Twins is deady pipe smokers, but they will smoke cigars. And then a lot of people do both. A lot of it is, I mean, you have people that are just hardcore. They've only smoked pipe. They've been smoking pipe for a long time. And then you have people that started with cigars, and then because of what we have at Twins, people pick up a pipe and they try it and they like it. So it's a mix, but there definitely is people that only smoke pipe. They have like 100 different types of pipes at home. They're like pipe collectors.
Really?
But it's funny because it's the clientele is just so different because with pipe tobacco, I mean, you have your people like what you were talking about, like the guy that comes in and buys 2 bundles of this same cigar. You have that again, like the 1Q smokers. They only smoke 1Q. You have the Captain Black people. They only smoke Captain Black. But your hardcore pipe people always come in, and it's always smokingpipes.com. It's always the reviews. They look at the media outlets, and they always are looking for the newest pipe tobacco. Whether it's limited, whether it's a new core release, they always want to smoke the new stuff. And they come in and they have the review in the list, and they're looking for stuff in the pipe shelf. And I mean, you can never carry all of it.
Well, that's like
unfortunately.
the people coming in the stores with the Scarfish Now list.
Yeah,
Nope.
same thing. But
These are the top 5. Where are they?
it's not even a ranking. It's just this media outlet reviewed it and they want it.
Yeah.
And smoking pipes is a big kind of outlet for them. And it's pipe smokers will smoke a lot. And that's why like something like these SKUs getting discontinued is going to have a lot more kickback than if it was like a cigar company that was maybe discontinuing some SKUs that weren't selling, because the demographic's more certain there. It's like, okay, well, only like 5% of our consumers buy this product. It's not worth carrying, and most people probably won't care. But then pipe, it's like the people that smoke that tobacco are going to be upset that they don't have it anymore, even if it's a small percentage of people, because that's just how pipe people are. Like they click onto something, they'll smoke other stuff, but they have like these brands that they love. And since there's such a diverse portfolio of pipe tobacco, it's not really a condensed area. So again, from the business perspective, I can understand why they're discontinuing, but from the pipe consumer perspective, I think it's going to be a lot of kickback. But it's from the manufacturing side, like the efficiency and how much of a burden is having all these different SKUs. I don't have any knowledge in that, but it's yeah. So that's kind of my opinion of that. It's going to be, the pipe people aren't going to be happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, I always, and like I said, I don't know much about the pipe consumer and all of that, so to speak. So, I was just genuinely curious, how that would go, because again, it's not really a realm we cover, and and to that point, maybe we should do some more pipe stuff. Not all the time, but maybe here and there we should do a couple of things, because I mean, I find it interesting enough to do a couple of shows on it here and there, and to share that with the audience. And
So I can answer JJ's question.
oh, okay, yeah, let me pop that up here.
So pipe tobacco, it's premium tobacco.
Okay.
So it's a lot of the time.
Well, the question is pipe tobacco chemically treated or natural, like cigar tobacco?
So it's natural, but there's something that is often done called toppings. So a topping, for instance, would be, like we'll take a navy, for instance, a navy blend. So oftentimes it'll be topped with rum. So you have like presses that are pressed like thousands and thousands of pounds of pressure, and they're press the rum into the tobacco. So it's toppings. Now, there is some tobacco that it's not chemically treated, but it's more of like artificial flavoring. But most of the premium pipe tobacco is going to be natural flavoring. It's just some kind of topping is what they call it. So you might get like vanilla topping, like rum, like I said, for the navy. And then you have regular, you can call it component tobacco. Like you have like Latakia, Perique, which is just a certain distinct varietal of light tobacco that's naturally cured. There's different ways of curing. There's air curing. There's fire curing. So it's still natural. It's just different ways it's processed. And then you get like sometimes topping. Well, oftentimes topping. There's a lot of tobacco that use topping. But it's not chemicals or anything of that sort, no.
Yeah, the few times that I did smoke some pipe tobacco, I got it at Twins. And there was a few actually I really liked. I'm remembering one of them was Rum Cake.
Yep.
The other one was, I think it was, is it Haunted Bookstore?
Yep, that's another one.
Yeah, that one was really good. And then there was a third one I got that I really liked. It might have been like a black cherry or something like that.
Yep.
And they were phenomenal. I mean, it was. I mean, again, it's not something I smoke every day, but like sitting down and like getting it, I'm like, oh, this is kind of enjoyable. And it's a different kind of smoke. It's a different taste.
Yeah, if you're a cigar nerd, it's honestly like you would enjoy pipes. And it's different. I think a lot of the time you need to learn how to pack the pipe, because I think people get frustrated by it. They have to relight the thing like 20 times. If you do it the right way, there's really no maintenance to it. And it is like the first pipe tobacco I smoked that got me into pipes was Mississippi River. And it's just like when it comes to like, especially like being a reviewer, like we talk about mouthfeel and things of that sort. Like pipe tobacco, not only is it a very aromatic experience, but you get like an interesting mouthfeel when you're smoking pipe tobacco. So Mississippi River, for instance, like it's a very kind of, like I say it kind of tastes like a pig roast. Like it has like that hickory smoky musique to it. It's leathery. It's really like warming. But when you drew from the pipe, the smoke initially hitting your tongue was like vinegar. Like it had like this vinegar sensation on my tongue.
Really?
And then once I was done drawing from the pipe and the smoke settled on my palate, it was just like this hickory pig roast bonfire. It was like the most unique thing I've ever smoked in my life.
Huh.
And I just got really into it because of how there's nothing in a cigar that's ever done that for me.
Right.
And I'm primarily a cigar guy. But pipe tobacco is definitely a unique experience. And I think people that enjoy smoking cigars would enjoy a pipe. But again, it's just kind of that learning curve of smoking it the right. Because if you don't smoke a pipe the right way, you get like what do they call it? Tongue bite. I think there's a different word for it, but like that bite. Because again, sometimes it burns kind of hot, and you get kind of a sore. But again, that's not packing it dense enough. There's a lot that goes into it.
Well, someone said to me that like the key to smoking pipes is, with a cigar, you light the cigar, you keep the cigar lit, you puff on it, whatever. But with a pipe, it's a little bit more than just keeping it lit, so to speak. It's you're tending the fire.
Yeah,
you keep the right temperature. You're keeping it burning.
Pack it the right way, then it stays lit. But you need to tamp it. So I mean, there's a cherry in the bowl, and when the ash is going to accumulate on top of it, but at some point it's not going to be dense enough that it's not going to stay lit. So when you light it the right way, when your smoke output's decreasing, all you got to do is you just take your tamper. When you do one of your draws, slowly you just kind of tamp it down gently, and then it's going to just increase your smoke production again. It's going to kind of spread that cherry out. So I mean, a lot of people like it. It's more of like a romance smoking experience. I mean, you can be a blender too. You can mix different tobaccos you like. I spoke of component tobacco earlier. That's just raw light tobacco. It's just one varietal. People will go, and that's what Pete Johnson did before he got into Tatawahe. Was I forget what the name of the shop was. I should
The
know.
Grand
this.
Havana Room?
Grand Havana Room.
Yep.
He was blending pipe tobacco. That was the first exposure he had to kind of his creative juices, and he was just blending pipe tobacco and just packing tobacco in a store, and that's what he did. So it is an interesting experience. And then it's when you're sitting down by yourself, it's therapeutic in a way because you're smoking and you're tamping it down. It's more of an engaging experience, and then like the sound of the tobacco burning, like kind of like those embers crackling,
like crispy crackle.
Yeah, and then the room note. I mean, there's some tobacco. I mean, common times people come in, they're like, hey, my grandfather smoked a pipe. I want to try it. There's one tobacco that, it reminds me of my grandfather, the way it smells. I think people connect a lot more experiences with a pipe, more so than cigars. And that's one thing that I've always stood by, even being a cigar smoker, is that there's more of an engaging kind of nostalgic experience when you're smoking a pipe.
Well, and like you said, you said it was a more engaging experience. It's less mindless than like when you're smoking a cigar. You sit down, you smoke a cigar, and it's just kind of like you're just kind of doing it, and you don't have to do much with it, other than if you have to relight it. With the pipe, it's like you kind of have to be into it the whole time.
Yeah, and then it's like I the other podcast I did. I mean, I could when I did Twins' podcast, we always did pipe every episode. We did cigar and then a pipe. And whenever you describe what a pipe tastes like, you use more imagery when you're discussing it other than just flavors, which is like really unique, and you don't even do it intentionally. Like I said, campfire. Obviously, it's smoky. Cigars are smoke. Pipe tobacco smoke. But it's like a distinct like the Mississippi River was like I'm at a fair. Like in New Hampshire, the Deerfield Fair. I go to it every year ever since I was a kid. It smells that way because I go specifically, like I walk by, there's a guy that does like baked beans, and he does like the old fashioned, digs a hole in the ground, does like hickory smoke, and he smokes
I know
the
what you
beans.
mean. Yeah.
Like when I smoked it, it brought me back to that.
Yes.
When I was a kid walking by the bean guy.
Yeah.
And there is something unique to it that a cigar just doesn't touch.
Right.
That's why whenever someone comes in, I'm not primarily a pipe guy, but if somebody's in the pipe section, I'll always help them, and I'll always kind of give them that feedback, because it does bring back, if you find the right pipe tobacco, it brings back something that you didn't realize was there, and it is kind of weird how it happens. And then you get pipe nerds, which, pipe nerds, but, commonly, I just suggest someone try a pipe. Get a corncob pipe, $10. That's typically how much they are. And just try it. Like it is unique, and I do enjoy it. I don't do it often. I don't do as much as I should, but it does. Whenever I do it, it just like, because I have tobaccos at home that I like, and it just brings me somewhere. Especially because the room note, the room gets kind of intoxicating with that aroma from the bowl, and it does put you in a place beyond that room you're sitting in. It's a unique experience.
Well, then you get like the people who do both. And they'll smoke their cigar, and then when they get it down far enough,
they put the cigar on the bowl,
and they'll smoke the whole thing just all the way through.
Like Dan at Twins, he does that all the time. Like he'll smoke a cigar, and if it's a really good one, like we always say, like you have nub worthy, which is when we take a cigar pick and we pick it, and then you have bowl worthy, which is beyond that point. And
basically, smoke the entire thing.
Yeah, it's until it's gone. It's all ash in the bowl.
I mean, but when you get down to here, though, I mean. Like nub worthy, sure, but like even here, like the very end that's been in your mouth the whole time. Is it even like at that point once you smoke?
There is some cigars I've had that I've done in the pipe, and like
because I don't really do it, so I don't know because I've never really tried that.
There is like as everyone knows that smoked cigars, like depending on like what quality the cigar is, like a really 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 good cigar you can smoke all the way down to the nub,
Sure.
And there is some that you can go past that point because it's just such a clean burning cigar that it's not going to get that kind of bitter, kind of acidic-y ending to it.
It doesn't have as much build-up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
So there is some pipe-worthy cigars out there.
Well, I'll say we're getting close to our time, and this has been good. But we should do a pipe show somewhere at some point soon. I think that would be interesting. But I think I'll cap it there, and you know, we'll finish the discussion there. We'll save the rest for another episode with pipes, which I think we'll do. But yeah, I think that'll be our show for this week. We'll keep it kind of light. It's been kind of a quiet few weeks, but but we're here. It's gonna be an exciting year. We got a lot of stuff planned, a lot of things we're trying to do as a team, and I'm excited for it. So it should be fun. It's 2025. It's our first show together in 2025. It's a long year ahead, and I think it's going to be great. So, guys, thanks for being with us, and look forward to sharing many more shows with you guys throughout the year. Go to smokeandtobacco.com for more updates and reviews from the cigar industry, and we'll see you next week.